Your name's not down, you're not coming in. Not tonight, not tonight.
We are Security Nation.
Your name's not down, you're not coming in.
Our expertise allows everyone to have a great time,
Your name's not down, you're not coming in.
so they can feel safe and enjoy the occasion to the max.
Not tonight, you're not on the list.
Guys, here we are. We have finally made it to the show that everyone's wanted to hear. So we're here. Let me just get this out of the way. I've just come back, point my teeth out again, just so that you know. We are here, and tonight we are talking about transgender. We are talking about that subject that everybody doesn't want to talk about. So I've got some lovely guests with me tonight. I've got Natasha. Say hello, Natasha.
Hello.
And I've got Sophie.
Hi there.
How you doing, Sophie? So, we are going to talk about everything. We're going to basically ask questions. We're going to try and get some answers that, the SIA don't give us answers, and there's all these questions that are coming up and nobody really sort of talks about the subject. So this is really for us to establish what is satisfactory to you guys, what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, what doormen should and shouldn't do. And hopefully we can come up with some informative stuff, and at the same time we'll probably learn a bit as well, I guess, and hopefully you see some of the things that we have to deal with and the difficulties we have, and hopefully we can sort out some bits. And just from talking to you earlier on and saying about how this all comes about, I've certainly learnt stuff. So here we go. So I'm going to start talking by asking, so how as girls, when did you realise, or when did you think, there's something that's not right, or something that you want to change, or at what age roughly?
Me, roughly, probably about 5.
About 5?
Yeah, 5 years old.
And
Yeah,
Sophie?
I'd say about 5 years old as well. As a child, definitely as a child.
Okay. And going through, the years, do you mind me asking, say no if I say anything out of turn, but do you mind me asking, when did you actually come out and make that stand, if you like, that moment?
I personally come out twice. I came out about 19 to my parents, who were very disapproving.
Mm-hmm.
My dad especially was. Went back in the closet because of that disapproval, and then I eventually...
So assumingly carried on as a man.
Yeah.
And then later on...
And at 47, I finally came out. It was 18 months after my dad passed away.
Okay. Fair enough. And Sophie?
About 5 years old, caused a massive bust-up with my parents, refused to accept. The usual, it was 1979-ish, so you can guess what attitudes were like back then towards anybody who fell under what we now know as the LGBTQ plus category.
Can I ask, you did say 5, right?
5 years old,
Yeah, you did. Okay, sorry. That's young. And you knew then?
My daughter's 11. She told us, that it's me and her mother, that she was a lesbian 3 years ago. Why would a child not know who they are? People are very quick to jump on children and tell them that they don't know who they are. But the truth is, we know who we are as we evolve and develop through life.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Who's to tell anyone they're not something, a child or an adult?
Okay. Well, I can tell you certainly I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. I listen to your opinions. I may not necessarily agree with them, but it's not really for me. It's not my opinion that matters in this case. This is an education thing for me. So, we're going to talk about things, and, we want to be informative for, the podcast is based on security. So we're going to try and help out the SIA. Many people know I own Security Nation. We supply, a lot of doormen, hundreds of doormen that go out every year, festivals, events, thousands of doormen. And there will be a time where they will obviously deal with a transgender issue. Now, that issue might not necessarily be with the transgender person. It's more or less with somebody else. And what I'd like to establish, or at the very least take steps towards, is what is the appropriate steps we should take? What is the right things that a doorman should do in certain situations? So who better to ask than you girls, really, and say, how do you think that should be? And I might suggest something and say, would that be appropriate? Would that not? You know, and we'll go from there. But I think as we go on, the more questions will be asked of doormen. I certainly think that there should be a module in the SIA course to deal with certain situations with regards to trans people. Is that the correct term? Trans people? Yeah. Trans people, gay, lesbian. Well, that's, you know, we can do with that. But certainly I think that there should be something in the training, because people come off the training course and they're not told how to deal with these issues. Hence, we're talking about it now, you know. And I'm probably going to ask you some questions that are a little bit close to the mark. If you don't want to answer them, you say so. At the same time, if you think I'm being a knobhead, say, yeah, knobhead. But I'm all right with that. But certainly from my point of view, let's ask the questions. So firstly, I spoke to an owner of a gay lesbian bar recently, and one of the questions I asked him was about the toilet situation. What toilets you use, what toilets should you use? Being a gay lesbian bar, they had the opportunity to essentially do away with the disabled toilets, and it's a gender neutral, whatever fits your pronoun kind of toilet, if that's the right way of putting it. But I think that's still a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably maybe a bit of an insult, because you identify as women and you're legally recognised as women, correct?
Correct.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're legally recognised as women. In theory, you should be allowed to use the ladies' toilets, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So for doormen that are listening, can you just explain what are the sort of characteristics, which means we cannot, or should not, is the word I should use, should not discriminate against you, like you spoke to me earlier and said, you know, if they've gone through any part of this or that.
So there's two acts of Parliament that sit to protect people. You've got the Equality Act and the Gender Recognition Act, both of which cover various areas for gender identity. And gender reassignment, being transgender, is covered in the Equality Act. It's a protected characteristic, the same as somebody who's disabled, somebody who's from an ethnic minority group, somebody who has got a religious identity.
So it's in the category, we shouldn't discriminate against you.
So, yeah, it's discrimination it's protected. You can't be discriminated against for being transgender.
Okay.
And the definition is quite clearly laid down that if somebody is either intending to, is undergoing, or has undergone a process to align their gender identity with that of which they believe they are, and that can be different to that assigned at birth, then they are protected in law.
So let me just clarify this for people that are listening. If you identify as a female, you've undergone any, or even to the point of you're dressed as a female and you are identifying as a female, for you doormen that are listening, treat them as female.
It basically, if you're out in public presenting as female,
Yeah.
you are entitled to use the female toilets.
Okay. That being said, not everybody is going to agree with that, are they?
No.
Okay. Have you ever experienced any kind of, I'm going to use the word hostility towards you because of you ladies going to the ladies' toilets? Be honest.
In a toilet? No.
Never.
Not in the toilet,
No.
okay.
No, not in the toilet.
Queuing up for a toilet.
Queued up for a toilet.
We
had somebody glaring at us in the queue, but they
Yeah.
kept their mouth shut
Mm-hmm.
and just carried on and the rest of it. But no, never
Generally,
Toilets.
never had an incident in a toilet. Toilets are
Toilets
seen
are-
as a safe space, and the safe space for any woman is the same for us as it is for them.
And most women I've encountered actually welcome us into the toilets.
yeah,
Yeah, they have no problem.
fair enough. I mean,
The usual conversation by the sink and the hand dryer.
Yeah.
just tell me what is the usual conversation, because you women can fucking talk.
You don't
Honestly.
you don't want to hear it.
No, actually I don't. You're right, but I just know that fucking, you know, if you're anything like my wife, you can talk, you know, and I've no doubt that you can just go for it. But no, so the scenarios are so occasionally. So let me just talk you through a scenario again. So if somebody did have an issue with that, and then they come out to me as the doorman, and as a doorman, she says to me, "Look, I'm sorry, but I'm not happy that there are 2 transgender women in my toilet." For the record, we should be saying, well, unfortunately, they are allowed in that toilet. Unfortunately, that's a you problem, as in her, not you. So as a doorman, we're quite within our rights to say, well, you know, if you don't like it, you can take that up with the manager. But these ladies are allowed to use the toilet. Correct?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's the establishment's issue to deal with that customer and not security staff. If they've got a problem with something that is happening with what is allowed and not allowed within a venue, that is outside of what your guys should have to deal with. If that person's got a complaint about somebody using the
You want to see the
toilet,
shit that we have to deal with as doormen.
But you just you should direct them to the
send them
manager.
to the bar manager or the owner, or tell them to put it. And if they don't like it, they know where the door is, and your staff would be more than happy to help them off the premises if that's what
Yeah.
they want.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, these are scenarios that we are talking about. I have no doubt that these have come up. I have no doubt. So let me run another scenario by you, and it's just something that we're just spitballing with. So a scenario. So a doorman being in a bar, and somebody complains to that doorman, says, "Look, you know, I'm not happy that." Oh, sorry, a woman's not happy that these guys are in the toilet, or this is a transgender person in the toilet. I'm really not happy. And I say to that woman, okay, as a doorman, innocently, especially if you're a younger doorman, and I do believe this, innocently you might think, well, actually, there's a male toilet, there's a female toilet, just to keep everybody happy. And he comes up to you and says, would you be okay with using the disabled toilet? What is your take on that?
My answer would be no.
Yeah, I'd feel insulted.
Insulted?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Because we're effectively women. We are legally entitled to use those toilets.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying that's wrong or right. I'm just saying that is so. You know, as a doorman, I think now what you have to accept, or what we as doormen have to accept, we're sort of damned if we do, and we're damned if we don't, because we're never going to keep everybody right. When we deal with situations of conflict or aggression, we try to find a win-win where both parties are happy. There are times where there is no alternative. There are times where I'm throwing you out, and I'm throwing you out. You've been a fucking idiot all night. You've ruined somebody's night. You've upset people. You've started a fight. You're out. However, as a doorman, if I can deal with that issue, and I can say, right, to diffuse this, how about you do this, you do that. So a win-win is always the best way. And innocently, I believe a doorman may say to you, rightly or wrongly, and I don't think you can hold this against a doorman because he's not been told any different. Excuse me, madam, would you use a disabled toilet? And in your words, you said that would be an insult to you, correct?
Yeah.
You agreeing with that one? Insult to yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
As it would be to any other woman being asked to use a disabled toilet, not the toilet of her choice. And,
how about we ask her to use the toilet?
We now have situations that are occurring in America where they've changed the laws already and brought in toilet policing, where cisgender women who are a little bit more masculine in their look are being removed from women's toilets despite being born female. Because somebody says
so they are biologic.
trans.
They are. So
They
what
were-
you're
yeah.
saying is they are actually biological.
They were assigned
females.
female at birth,
Yeah.
and because somebody said, "I think that's a man," people have acted on it.
See,
and
I think that's
is,
wrong. I
and
think
the
that
US is
shouldn't,
changing its law to do this. Do we really want to go down the same thing in this country?
So I think that that's wrong on so many levels. I can say to you, you know, if a disabled person comes up to us And, you know, the guy could be like, look like Usain Bolt, but says to me he's disabled. I cannot say to that guy, well, prove it to me. I can't say, I don't believe you're disabled, prove it. But what I might say is, okay, fair enough, you use the toilet, and then you might say, but can you go and get a disabled wristband, or can you do that? I know that certain festivals, and I won't mention who, but there are certain festivals where people do come and use the disabled toilet who we question, and they don't necessarily have disabled wristbands that allow them to. Now, we obviously, there's a common sense element. We try to use common sense, like pregnant women, things like that. We're not going to make them walk. We allow them to use the toilet. But then there's guys that walk up that have just done like an OCR race, or they've just done like the Ironman, but all of a sudden they say they're disabled just because they don't want to walk up the hill to use the toilet. So sometimes they'll say, can you go to the medical tent, and they will establish whether, you know, and that's not my decision, but that's what happens at certain places. So, sorry, it's my wife's just put her head in, that's all. So there are certain establishments that do that. Now, what about, and this is just a suggestion that popped into my head, how do you think the woman would react who's complained about you? If I said, that's all right, my darling, you don't have to go in the same toilet as them. They can use the ladies, you use the disabled, love. As in her.
She would then
she'd be
feel
insulted.
exactly the same way as we felt when she suggested we should go
It's just a
somewhere
thought
else.
that came into my head
I
as
mean,
as
me-
I
And
was speaking.
It's the flip side, isn't it?
Me personally, 90% of the population are accepting of trans people. They have not a problem. It's the vocal 10% who have that issue and will be very loud with it. And that's where a lot of this you can't use these toilets, you can't do this, comes from this really vocal minority of people.
Okay, yeah, no, I believe that. So let's talk about something else, which is I'm going to use the word a strange anomaly in recent years. I've been a doorman for 30 years. You know, I've been on this for 30 years doing doors, clubs and pubs. 25, or say 15 years ago, I don't think I came across transgender people at all. Probably wasn't anywhere near as, I'm going to use the word popular today. Is that the right word? Not really popular.
Sounds a bit Tory party, doesn't it?
Okay, no, I'm certainly not acceptable. Acceptable. Let's go with that. Okay, I told you need to correct me on words if I go that way. So not popular, acceptable. So more acceptable today. And so, you know, let's be honest. I don't care whether you're black, gay, straight, lesbian, identify as a tree, and you fucking come out as a penguin. I really don't care. I treat everyone the same. You've never been rude to me. You've never punched me in the face. I have no reason other than to be nice to you girls and go, do you know what? They were great. That's my issue with everything, okay? So when somebody says to me, actually, they're a cross-dresser, and you told me about this earlier. Now, you said cross-dressing was almost like a precursor to transgender almost.
Not always.
Not always.
But everybody has to start a journey somewhere.
And
Whether you understand in your own mind who you are from a very young age, or whether things fall into place as you get older, at some point, and I can't say for trans men, who obviously go through a process of change as well. But
Yeah, I think we're talking about
But
men
this
to
is
women, but don't forget there's also women to men. So
the whole issue that is escalated through the gutter media is always about people who are assigned male at birth. And let's put this another way: nobody tells your child when they're born that they're gay, lesbian, or straight. They can't make that decision by what they've got fitted to their body. So how can they make any judgment on what's in your head and how you see yourself? They can't. We put everything on what's on a birth certificate, which is purely a judgment made by someone else against a person who can't communicate because they haven't learnt to communicate yet. So when people can communicate, as they start to grow up and they come out with their own ideas about who they are, at the moment, there's a huge building to try and stop any children being under medical treatment or getting medical assistance for gender-related issues.
So let me give you my opinion or take on that. So I don't believe, and I believe this. I would be very upset as a parent if somebody tried to force an opinion on my children. If somebody said you're gay or you're lesbian to my daughter or my son or whatever, I think that in itself is wrong. And
or the reverse of trying to tell your child they're straight and they can't be something else.
Possibly, but for me, and I look at the children and say, right, do what you want to do growing up. I think that this world is just full of shit when we become adults. So enjoy it while you can. So whilst you're a child, I don't think anyone should influence you other than you be what you want to be. But I am against, certainly, and I don't know if it happens here, but I've sort of heard it on different things. I'm against places like in America where they're issuing a drug to suppress natural development of somebody who's maybe 8 to 10, because I think that maybe they need to be given the chance to, whatever decision you make. But I personally think that if you feel that you want to be a female and you are born a male, and you felt that all the way up through your childhood, I think at 16, and this is just my opinion, so it doesn't really account to much, but at 16, you've learned enough about life in your 16 years that you've been there to know that through natural growing up with everybody else, that either you're slightly different or you want to change. And I believe that you should be given the chance to make that decision. Not necessarily influence, but you should be allowed to make that decision.
That's what puberty blockers are for. Puberty blockers are given to children to halt puberty, to delay puberty so that they can make that decision.
Whilst they still develop mentally.
Yeah,
and understand who they are.
Because puberty is probably one of the most difficult times for a trans person. If you're going through male puberty and you feel like you're a woman, if you feel like you're a girl, how do you think you're going to be? I had a horrendous time during puberty.
I can't begin to say that I would understand it because I don't.
I'll throw another one in here because you know some trans men, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And how different do they come across to you to a cisgender man?
Truthfully?
Post their transition, if they've been on testosterone, they've had HRT.
So I was talking, for example, I had another guest who was coming on. He is a doorman. He is a doorman at a club. He's a head doorman, believe it or not. And genuinely, I did not know he was born a female. Okay. And I spoke to that guy, and
there's a reason for that, because the damage and the changes. I say damage; it's not damage is maybe the wrong word. The changes that testosterone brings into a body, with the absence or the restriction of estrogen, which would be in somebody assigned female at birth. Once you add testosterone into the mix as HRT, they grow face hair. They bulk up.
Yeah.
Their voice deepens.
Yeah. It's a male hormone, isn't it?
However, the changes that testosterone does and will do it in somebody who is assigned male at birth, but who from a young age knows who they are and says they're transgender. Once those physiological changes have happened, your voice has dropped, you've got facial hair, you've changed body shape, that's irreversible. You are then, and this is why trans women stand out, because for trans women who have gone through full puberty and developed physically as a male...
Are you saying that would stop the way your shape as well?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm just... don't know.
Those changes are as near as permanent can be. You can do things about facial hair, you can have laser treatment, electrolysis, whatever, to kill the hairs. But the damage is done, and people have to go through so much more when what could happen would be quite simple to just delay. By using medications that are available to delay.
I don't know enough about it. I'm not an expert on it. I heard and I just thought, you know what, surely, and this is my logic, and you might not necessarily agree with it, but my logic was, let them make their own decisions. Nobody should influence that. But at least do it when you're 16. So then you've got an informed, and I use the word informed decision, and it's
Yeah,
my
but
decision.
There
We
has to
said
be
this-
there has to be informed consent anyway. Informed
Right.
consent has to be part of it. Somebody can't decide that somebody else is going to do it. A parent can't decide that their child is going to transition. It has to be informed consent, and blockers are a means to slow down other things from happening, i.e. the irreversible changes that testosterone would bring to somebody born male. And
So what you're saying,
it
so
would
you
allow
ultimately
them,
agree
it would,
for them to
it
do
would allow it would allow that individual to grow up a little bit more mentally and develop in the world to a later age where they can decide whether it is fully right for themselves, and then they're in a position to give informed consent.
and they're completely reversible. So if you, as soon as you stop, you'll go through puberty. So if they if they take them for a few years, decide that they might just be gay, they might not be trans. Just take them, and they'll go through male puberty, and they'll.
So I'm no doctor, and I can't argue that because I don't know if that's right or wrong. It's my opinion, and my opinion was, I think that they should be able to have made had a few years under their belt to absolutely know. Now, what you're saying is,
I guess the bit that I was saying, so if you've got somebody who was assigned female at birth, and there are things that are different in how they develop. Obviously, they develop other parts that grow, and for many that are trans men, they will go through removal surgery and have them taken away. Or they
You're talking about breasts,
or
correct?
they use binders or whatever, which is not healthy. It's not good for them.
No.
But if they go on HRT, all the things that would make them seem more male and satisfy, to an extent, who they are, aside to the major surgery parts of it, put them on hormones. Their voice will deepen. They will bulk up, and their body shape will change. They will grow hair where it was either very soft or didn't really grow before.
Yeah.
And those things will all happen for them. Going through HRT as a trans woman, it can soften some of the things, but it doesn't. The damage is already there.
So
because you've already physically changed into an adult version of the thing you never wanted to be.
I mean, I've already said I've got a big issue with my voice before we came on.
Yeah.
Because to me it is too deep. I don't like it.
What you say? It's too deep because you identify as a female. You want to be a female, and the voice is just not in. That's like me saying I'm too fat. I want to have a six pack. It's almost like a perfection thing, and I don't suppose there is too much that you can do about that. Is there?
No, but if you want a six pack, you can get one.
Yeah, all right.
You can
Yeah,
do voice
I know when I'm fat.
You can do voice training,
Yeah.
which will help you feminise your voice, but it will still be masculine to a degree. You can't completely get away from that.
No.
You can soften it so that it sounds a little bit more feminine. But
And again, shoot me down if I'm wrong, but you're almost training and practicing to be the female. I know you identify as female, but you're rehearsing the voice so it is more acceptable to you, I guess. Like, I'm talking to you, and I have no problem with your voice. I'm not going to sit here and go, fucking hell, she sounded really like a man, because I genuinely don't have that opinion. I don't care what you sound like.
But we go out, we start talking to them. As soon as we open our mouth,
Yeah.
we might pass, we might look completely female.
Do you know what they say to me?
As soon as
Great teeth.
But as soon as we open our mouth,
But only recently.
Yeah, last week, yeah.
But as soon as we open our mouth, that immediately gives us away.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, generally, I'll go shopping, wander around, do anything, and just nobody really even pays any notice. Nobody looks. You might get the odd kid, generally, if we're talking, while we're walking along the street, and somebody overhears, they might glance, but most of the time, they might even just glance and they just carry on what they're doing because it doesn't register what they're seeing.
I think...
But when you're in a service environment and you have no option but to directly communicate with other people in front of you, it becomes very obvious.
Yeah.
And in our own minds...
Are you
it's
subconscious of it?
very
And-
self-conscious of it.
Yeah.
And the thing is with me as well, so I work in a delivery warehouse. I go out on the vans and I've got to phone customers up.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as I start talking
They
to
meet
them,
you, they don't think that you spoke to them.
as soon I was going out to someone before once a while back, and she goes, "Oh, you're my sofa man," and I couldn't say anything because I'm on the phone. She doesn't know anything. As soon as she opened the door, her face dropped. She
Yeah.
says, "I'm so sorry," but my voice gave me away, and that's my main.
So that's a
problem.
personal.
It's a bit like Marge Simpson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. But again, that's, I think everybody has. I don't think many people in the world, and I can include most models, everybody else. I don't think everybody in the world is totally satisfied in their selves, their bodies. Bodybuilders that have got some of the best physiques in the world are constantly looking for improvement. As you, as a female, you are looking for improvement, but
it's
for
not-
your own self.
But it's not necessarily. It is improvement, but it's the fact that because
The improvement is being able to be the person you feel you should have always been.
Yeah.
and,
And that's a big difference. Because while somebody can be a bodybuilder, if you've got the knack of it and you can do it and you want to compete at it, you can put the effort in to do it. But you're tied by the circumstance of birth for being transgender. Nobody asks for it. Nobody asks to be born trans any more than anyone asks to be born gay or lesbian.
Can I ask you a serious question? Would you, and I'm going to ask the question, and you don't have to answer it, would you, if you could rewind the clock right back, would you have rather been born a female from the get-go
Absolutely.
definitely.
than to go through what you have?
But then if I
Definitely.
was born again, what would that person be? Because they wouldn't be me. So,
Well,
It's a double
yes,
sword.
yes. Obviously,
you-
if I was able to be who I am now and have that thing right from birth, 100%, because that is who I've known my whole life I'm supposed to be.
okay.
But our lives would have been completely different because we would have been
100%, yeah.
Yeah, because we would have
you
the
wouldn't
whole
have had the struggles you have.
Yeah,
And I get that it's not an easy thing.
It would be so much easier if we were born female because we wouldn't have the discrimination.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, we're not.
So-
So we've got to deal with the cards we've been dealt
So
with.
is it right for me to say, you know what, you are making right? Am I going to use the word mistake? Is that the right terminology to use? That you felt that you should have been born women?
It is a mistake of birth. I'd say it's.
You're saying
we-
it's,
we
I don't
should
want to
have been
use
born-
that term, and then somebody say to me it's not a mistake.
Some people are born with 3 fingers.
Yeah,
Some people are born with webs between their toes or 6 toes.
I think nature sometimes
that's
makes
a accident of nature.
Yes.
and
100%.
And absolutely nobody, when they have a child, can predict that what is going to be born, whether it's a boy or a girl, is going to be for the rest of their life what they give birth to.
Yeah, well,
Because until that person
no, I'd agree with that.
is
They
able to
can't- they can't.
communicate who they are,
Yeah.
and we can communicate from a young age.
Sure.
Once you can communicate, that's when people get to know who that person is. Even as a child, you know so much about your child because they tell you things about themselves. They tell you how their day's been. They tell you things they've learnt. You see how they're developing and evolving with how society is around them. And there will be things that you don't like about society that you wish were different because you think they're going to be detrimental in the future. But you can never be sure.
So,
But the things that are inherently within somebody,
You're born with.
even as a parent, I have 2 children.
Yeah.
You have no control over that.
Okay.
You get a child and you do your best to nurture them and bring them up to be a decent person,
Yeah.
2, to be able to think for themselves,
sure.
3, to be able to stand up for what's right,
Okay.
and the kind of things that go with that, if that makes sense, and to be able to speak up and be themselves without fear of
Oh,
discrimination for anything.
Let me just explain one thing. Probably, I'm a bloke. I fucking do bloke things. I'm dumb enough to say stupid things. I probably don't listen to my wife anywhere near as much as I should do. I probably have the attention span of a gnat. I am a typical bloke. I forget people's names. I forget where I'm supposed to be sometimes, and then like my PA shouts at me and says, "You're supposed to be this and that." I am a bloke, right? And I do bloke things. And I think sometimes I'm sort of, sometimes I almost, like I said to you tonight, I'm sort of almost treading on eggshells because I could offend you, and I'd hate to offend you. I don't want to come across as being rude, and I'd be mortified if you thought that I was rude and offensive when I don't ever want to be. I have, like I said to you, I have no problem at all with you. But inadvertently, being a fucking bloke, I sometimes drop a bollock sometimes, and I might refer to you as him or them or whatever. And the first time you might go, "All right, dumbass," and the second time, but then sometimes it can be deliberate. I certainly wouldn't do that. But as a man, I act the way I am. And what I noticed with you earlier on, there was a point where you move very feminine. Almost, if I didn't know you were a transgender person, for example, and I just had to look at your outline, the way you moved, I thought was feminine for a woman. And I'm guessing, am I right in saying that you rehearse that, or is that just a natural thing? I don't know. I mean, I don't rehearse what I am. This is me. And I'm assuming that that's just you.
I don't practice moving my body, no.
No.
Yeah.
I just move the way I move.
Yeah. Well, I sort of looked at it and I thought, if you were my doorman, for example, and I'm probably going to go out on a limb here, but if you were my doorman and you walked like you walk, I'd probably go, "What's fucking wrong with you?" You know, because you walk like females. And that sounds strange for me to say it, but I notice it as a man. I can look at it and go, it's not a typical male walk. And there are probably many other traits that you have that you don't have to walk, you don't have to practice, you don't have to, do that. But from my point of view, so let me spin the table. You as girls in the ladies' toilets, and again, this is a security kind of question, and a male like me, I walked into the ladies' toilets. Would you say something?
Yes.
Yes.
What would you say?
What
Think you're in the wrong room here.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Think you're lost.
Think I'm lost.
Yeah.
Don't pass as a female.
I'd give you an opportunity to leave before I did anything else.
Okay, well that's kind of cool. So I'm now going to let you into a 100% true story, and you can tell me what you think. Okay, so Nadia from Big Brother. Yeah, remember her?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had the unfortunate task of getting Nadia out of one of my nightclubs a few years ago, and had a full-on fight with her. She attacked us. It was crazy. It was a crazy night, and a lot of people know that I had this incident with her. She latched onto the stairs. She went mad. Now I refer to her as a her. I don't care what she was, what she is. Don't care. But she had the strength of a man, and I know that because I was the one trying to pull her off this other person. And for me, as a doorman, I can see there being a time where an altercation may take place, and it could be somebody that's gone at a transgender person, probably more than likely, and that transgender person lashes back. You've got every right to. Everyone has. I would not accept anybody attacking you and you not defending yourself if you had to, if that was the case. And I can only assume, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you probably still have more strength than the average woman. Yes? No?
Probably a little bit. I mean, when you get on HRT, you do lose body muscle mass.
Okay.
So you do lose strength. But
I don't know why I felt nervous asking you that. That's strange.
I still think you still have a little bit more strength than. But then again, you get some really strong women. You get women out there who are built.
I've been clouted by many a woman.
Yeah.
And I can assure you,
So it's also
I don't want to be hit by any women. But
it's subjective. You could have a trans woman who is like really thin, no muscle at all. But you could have a cis woman who is built like a brick, whatever.
Okay. Bring me on to my next question then. Should transgender women be allowed to compete against biological women?
That is a very
It's a
difficult question.
it's a really difficult question, and I'm acutely conscious that World Athletics have now put a ban in place on it.
I
This-
didn't know, actually, have they?
if
And well, swimming did at the start with World
So,
Athletics.
obviously,
have done it,
the
and there
lead-
are other sports that are thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen certain things in America where
However,
certain,
there
and that
are
leads
tra-
me to ask that question.
there are
However,
trans,
there aren't many trans athletes or trans sports people competing at that level.
No,
and there's
So-
not many
so-
actually winning at
So,
that level.
and even if they are, they're not winning. Which
that's all well
which
and good, but when
by-
they do win, they're not. Then there's a question. So, for example, there's
well, they're
there's
damned if they do, damned if
Yeah.
they don't, aren't
For-
they?
that-
Because people
true.
are only happy if they're losing. Yeah, you can compete as long as you lose.
No. I'm not. I certainly wouldn't be
No,
happy
but
to lose.
that's exactly the point.
I
People
don't
are only
think-
happy if trans athletes lose. But again, this is all a subject about trans women and women. It's not about trans men competing against men. Because funny, guess what? Nobody's complained about that. Nobody's complained about it, or the fact that that
Good point,
male
yeah.
athlete has had a lifetime of training.
But can you give me an example of a female that's transitioned to a male and won?
No, but I can't give you an example of a trans female other than the swimmer.
Leah
the other year.
Thomas, she effectively
The
is
swimmer.
Yes, so she's effectively still a male competing against top level females.
There was
My
an odd
issue is this.
circumstance
But is
around
she-
that, though,
and
wasn't
also,
there?
is she always winning? She won. She might have won once, but has she won near all? But I bet she's been.
I can't be specific, but I,
bet
can
she's
only
been
say
beaten
that.
a couple. I bet
Sure.
cis women has also beaten her a few times.
I
as
think
well.
if we were to, let's be really honest. Let's be really honest. If we're talking about a sport which involves strength, speed, and stamina, I think that any female is at a disadvantage when against a male in
So
those
I'll
sports.
throw you another one here.
Yep.
So Texas, 2 years ago,
Yep.
college wrestling, not the old WWE.
Yeah, I know.
Not the
Yep.
not the old choreographed dancing wrestling, proper grappling wrestling.
Yep.
Female to male trans student who has competed
Yeah.
as a female when she was younger,
Yeah.
but at 19 years old, top level of college sports in America, they make a big deal of this
Yeah,
stuff.
for
don't
sure.
they?
I lived there for 2 years.
So
playing.
in Texas,
Yeah.
no, you have to compete against what it says on your birth certificate. So there is an HRT pumped up, well built up trans man,
But biologically, she's
and
a
the
female.
school and the sport
Yeah.
said the only way she could compete as a wrestler was if she was in the women's competition. Won it 3 years in a row, and on the final year she won it. Two of the other contestants pulled out and waived their fight because they were afraid they'd get hurt by it. Him. Get hurt by
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. I mean, you
But
can.
birth certificate says female
Yeah.
and is forced to compete against females. People have to remember, if you want to ban trans women from female toilets,
Yeah.
the flip side is that all trans men will have to use women's toilets, no matter where they are with surgery, HRT or anything else. You want those women out of that toilet, you will be making room to allow all those men in.
So,
The same in sport.
let me
if
ask
you're
you the
going to say
question.
that trans women
should
can
they or
only
should they be allowed?
What-
I know. I know it's probably an
Also-
impossible
yeah,
question.
Also, on the other side, what about trans women who haven't had all the testosterone because they came out young, so they've only gone through estrogen. They're physiologically the same as every other cis woman because they've had no testosterone and that. Why should they be banned? Because they are exactly competing on exactly
Well,
the same level.
I'm no is it biologist? I can't be certain on what effects each one has. I mean, obviously, I know what steroids do. I know what certain. I've been in and around gyms all my life, but certainly, I stand by this that I believe women should compete against women, men should compete against men, and if you are a transgender woman or you are a transgender man, then maybe compete against transgender women or transgender man. And the reason I say
but
that,
there aren't enough of them
Yeah.
to compete
Yeah.
against each
and
other.
the reason I say that is because and I will make this statement clear here and now. It'll only be a matter of time before a female gets possibly killed or hurt by a man who is essentially transgender.
But more
So there's a
more-
female fighting in the MMA at the minute who was a man, and she is trans. And the last fight, she broke a woman's skull. And it will be a matter of time before somebody gets killed at the hands of a man, and the argument will be she should never have been competing against him. And it will happen. I'm not saying it's right. I was certainly saying it's not right. What I'm saying is it will happen.
It will, but then what happened to Michael Watson in the boxing?
It does happen, yeah. But Michael Watson was fighting Nigel Benn, two men. You're set out in that respect.
Yeah.
But
right?
what happened to him?
He got brain damage.
Yeah.
But if a female is fighting a man, right, whether that man has transgendered into a female and identifies as a female, he still has genetics of a man, correct?
But-
And strength of a man.
I'm
And I'm only
not
saying this.
disputing that
I'm only saying this.
There are
that
potentially
that
years
is a danger
of
to women.
years
Yeah.
of years
But-
of physical strength and development that could have taken place.
Hmm.
However, when you to do HRT transition, one, you need to stop testosterone in that body,
Yeah.
so it's blocked from production.
Yeah.
So testosterone levels drop through the floor, and they're closely monitored because testosterone and
I think mine's dropped through the floor. I have a job to get it up
it's just,
now. No.
it's just an old thing.
Yeah, it's an age thing, yeah. It's all right.
And estrogen is added, but the whole process, and in sport, that was very carefully monitored. There's no monitoring of testosterone in female sports people, and many women have high levels of testosterone within the body. There's some very angry
I
women
mean,
out there.
there was
And the prime example...
No shit, Sherlock.
The prime example...
My wife's a very angry woman.
She's just out there,
Yeah.
be careful. The prime example was Martina Navratilova.
Yes.
Tennis player.
Yep.
Huge physical advantage.
Are you saying she didn't take steroids?
She was never proved to have taken steroids,
but-
and
I
she
think
was.
she admitted it in her own biography. She
But
took a lot of she took a lot of testosterone.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but if
She did.
she may not have been taking steroids. She may have having testosterone injections that were giving her a physical advantage. And yes, she had that advantage because of elevated levels of that hormone in her body.
Uh-huh.
That essentially gave her the ability to physically perform more like a man.
More recently, in that as well, there's that runner recently who actually they did a biology test on her to make sure that she was biologically female. I can't remember what her name was.
Was
now.
this the
Asta Semenya?
was this the hermaphrodite?
No, she was a cis woman, but because she physiologically looked quite masculine and she was winning lots of races,
They wanted to
they
check,
they
yeah.
actually checked her, and she was proved to be a cis woman.
Okay, but then that's a genetic gift. It's like Michael Phelps, a swimmer. He's genetically blessed, where his knees would actually go an extra inch further back. So on his kick, he could go, like a normal person would go to there, Michael Phelps's would go to there because his knees were almost double jointed to the point where he could do it. That makes him have an advantage, which you can't argue. He is genetically blessed in that respect. Powerlifters, some of the strongest men in the world. Listen, we know that steroids exist in these sports, but the reality is, whilst these guys are immensely strong from what they do, they enhance that with other performance-enhancing drugs. Now, women, men, I believe there is a difference. There's no belief in it. There is an absolute difference in it. Now, whether you are a man who has transitioned into a female, I think that the genetics will still stick with you.
But like I said before, if you're a
Which gives him the
if
unfair
you're
advantage.
male to female, but you haven't gone through puberty,
I still think he has
but
the advantage.
They've had no testosterone. They've probably got less women still produce testosterone. They do. They still. But if you're a trans woman, you will not produce any testosterone. You'll have less testosterone than a cis woman.
I'm not a medical expert, so I can't really argue that. I'm just saying that, my opinion was, shouldn't they not? So
I don't think it's not easy to answer, and
No.
I don't think it will ever be. I don't think you'll ever satisfy an answer for that one.
It'll always be an argument because, I mean, it's a very emotive subject.
So we're on the fence. Safe to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Safe to say it's on the fence. The reason that I talk to you guys, girls, sorry, apologise, is, well, when I say guys, I refer to anyone anyway. But the reality is, I want your opinions. This is why we're asking it, and these are the reasons why. Because, and I'm not sure if I've said it, I don't associate with transgender people generally. I just don't have anybody in my life that is. And hopefully you two will still speak to me out in the street. But my thing is, if I don't ask these questions and say, tell us what you think, because I don't suppose many doormen get the time to sit down and speak with a transgender person and go, what do you think about this? What do you think about doormen? Are we doing it right? Are we doing it wrong? And for us as doormen, like I said, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't.
I'd say generally doorwomen and doormen do get it right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd like to think so.
Because I think generally they act on what is the instinct to the neutral ideal. It's not a taking sides thing. Generally, they will go down neutral ideal, and if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right.
One of the things I've learned from our discussion tonight is that when you clarified to me that you are allowed to use the toilets because of so many different characteristics and traits, and for me, I can be happy or confident in the knowledge when I train in here, this is our training room, and I do SIA courses weekly, where we will sit and teach people and say, in this situation, if that is a transgender person and she identifies and she decides to wear a wig, wear a skirt, and she identifies this and whatever, it's not for us to question it, we just accept it. So accept that she is a female, allow her to use the toilet. If the person who has a complaint or has a concern would like to wait, that's up to them. If she has a problem with it, she can write to the owners of the bar, she can owners of the pub, and if she's really busting for a piss, then she can use the gender neutral. There you go. Is that a fair shout?
I'd say so, yeah.
Because for me, it's about teaching and learning for these guys that are SIA. Because, like I said, I will have a guy, and I own Security Nation, I would be mortified if I had a complaint come in where a transgender person said to me, I wasn't handled correctly by your doorman, he spoke to me in the wrong tone, he spoke to me as a male when I'm clearly a female, he did not take my gender seriously, I'd be fucking fuming with that. But then I'd ask the question, do you even understand what it is that you are dealing with and how you should deal with it? And I'd say 99% of doormen probably don't, because nobody in the SIA comes out and says, this is what happens when it happens. That should be done.
Most doormen are pretty good. Mm-hmm. The issue comes with the people going into the clubs or the pubs. That's where the issue comes from. That's where the discrimination comes from the general public.
Yeah, I've no doubt it's coming from them.
Yeah, not doormen. Doormen tend to, in my experience, doormen do tend to deal with the situation correctly. They will survey the situation. Whoever's being the aggressor will be the guilty party.
And I think that's probably a given. If I was in a bar, one of my cocktail bars, whatever, and I saw you, and somebody was aggressive to you, I would be pulling that person out, male or female, and saying, you're not here to ruin anyone's night. Our job is to make sure that you have a safe, enjoyable night. If I saw that person and their attitude to me was one that I didn't think was acceptable for the venue, I'd be bringing them out, and I'd be saying, I don't give a fuck what you think. I've just seen this, and you will be out. And that would apply for you if you were the aggressor.
Yeah, and that's all anyone can ask for. Everyone, whenever you go out, you want to feel safe, and the doormen are there to make you feel safe.
Sure.
Now,
so generally speaking, do you feel happier that the doormen are there? Is it a good thing for you?
Yeah, I've never had a problem.
I've never had to ask a doorman for assistance.
No. But it's a nice thing for me to be able to say to these guys, they're obviously doing a good job. So for you guys that are watching the show, if you've had any problems dealing with transgender people, or not dealing with them, but the issues in hand? Generally speaking, you're doing a good job. Well done.
There is another one here that comes up as well that I know other people have a problem with, and that's ID checks.
Okay, ID checks. Sorry, explain that to me. What do you mean?
So you don't instantly have a gender marker changed.
So what you're saying is because your
could be
identity
ID'd.
is Natalie and Sophie.
Natasha,
Yeah,
Sophie.
fucking hell.
So
Sorry,
you
but
could
your
be
ID could say something different. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because you can't change the name
Yeah.
unless you've got a deed poll,
Okay.
and it's not as simple as just getting up one morning and you can change everything.
So yes, that
And
granted. So
you
what do
could
they say
also-
to you then? Do
right,
they
and
say
the other part is that you can change your name by deed poll. However, you can't change the gender marker. So you turn up somewhere and your driving licence has got an M on it. You can't get your driving licence or your passport gender marker changed until you've waited through the entire NHS waiting times,
Sure.
which are currently heading from 5 to 6 years for your first appointment after a referral from your doctor.
Okay.
And that's, a lot
So-
of people
so-
don't even
so,
get a referral straight away. It might take them a long time to get the idea.
Are you saying then that you're questioned purely because you're dressed and your appearance of a female, and they're going, but you're male on here? Is that what you're
Again,
saying?
And the photo might
Because I'd be annoyed at a
It
doorman
can-
if he
it
did
can
that.
be, it can be.
If a doorman hasn't got the common sense to realise that, then he shouldn't be doing the job.
Sometimes you might show your driving licence. It's got a male picture on it, male name on it, and they'll look at it and think, well,
Right, okay,
it doesn't
that
match
can
up.
be confusing.
Yeah.
And I've got to sort of defend the doorman there. The doorman, especially when you're looking at hundreds of IDs, you're going, yeah, and doormen become tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision.
They just look and going, yeah, and they're not even sort of paying attention. And then all of a sudden it comes up and there's a bloke on the picture and you think, okay, that's the picture of you as a man, and you go, hang on. And all of a sudden that it throws that into question because the doorman's like, hang on. And
Yeah, but
then he's looking at it, but he's analysing you.
And that's
he's looking at the ID. He's like, is that you? But he doesn't want to identify. Sorry, what's the word? Doesn't want to embarrass you.
Yeah.
I would hate that. But sorry. But at the same time, holy shit, it's a different picture.
Again, that's how the doorman has to.
Pardon?
That
But
is
then
how
you
the
know
doorman
what? A
has to deal with
passport
it.
lasts for 10 years.
Yeah.
How different do people look after 10 years?
Yeah, no, granted, but we don't generally accept passports that are out of date, and
No, an in-date
sometimes
passport could be almost 10 years old.
yeah, but
And
that's what I mean.
people can look
Sometimes we look at
vastly
that,
different.
and I can, I've had my teeth done. Take a look at them. But the fact is, I look different, but there's a difference and a subtle difference. I might put weight on, you might put this on. I've lost my hair, whatever. But I think you have to be a little bit acceptable to the fact that the doormen are going to go, hang on.
It is, but it's down to how they deal with it, because
how it's dealt
if-
with
if
is
they-
the thing, because if they hold a queue of
blatant it,
people
Yeah.
and then start questioning you in front of all those other customers,
it
Right.
embarrasses
That's a
them.
really embarrassing
so
position.
that's interesting what you're saying.
so let's
doormen,
just go somewhere
be mindful of-
inside
right, there you go.
and be mindful of the situation.
there you go.
Because
So
there's
this is what we're
nothing-
saying.
There's
So
nothing wrong with asking.
the questions are totally acceptable to you as long as it's done the right way in the right place.
100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Out of
So that's what we're
public
getting
eye.
at. And this is what I'm saying. So, Dorman, listen to what she has just said. That if you have a question, no problem in asking the question, correct? As long as it's A, not done in a patronising way, not done as in, in a joke like, oh yeah, fuck off. But actually say, would you mind just telling me or explaining that to me? And if that person said, would you mind explaining that to me? And you said, yeah, I'm transgender female, this is what I am, this is what it is. And the doorman went, fair enough, in you go, darling. That's exactly what I'd say.
It's just got its subtlety, because you don't want to embarrass. If you've got a queue of people behind you,
Yeah.
and you're the only trans person in that queue, you don't want to be highlighted
Yeah.
and embarrassed.
So let me tell you something, and I saw this once, and I won't say who. So I saw a girl who was a rather large girl, and she had put herself into a catsuit. Probably not the best choice for a woman of her figure, to be fair. biological female. And I heard a doorman make a comment or a remark, fucking hell, she's crammed herself into that. What the fuck does she look like? And the dickhead said it, and she heard it. And I instantly took offence to the fact, and I pulled him off the door. And luckily, he wasn't working for me, but working with me. So it was a while back. And I said, who the fuck are you to ruin somebody's night? That girl has probably just spent the entire evening plucking up enough courage to do her makeup, do her hair. She looks great. Probably not the best choice of outfits, but she's in it. And the fact that you have just made her feel so insecure of her own self because you as a fucking idiot doorman couldn't keep your mouth shut. All I want to hear out of your mouth is, hi girls, have a great night, see you next week. They're only the 3 things I want to hear. And he said it in such a way that it made her feel so bad. And I watched her, and she came out probably an hour later, and I couldn't help it. I asked her, I said the question, I said, is everything all right with you? She goes, yeah, I'm just going home. I'm not feeling it. And I said, listen, I'm going to ask you a question. I said, I heard what that doorman said. Is that what it was? And she just burst into tears. And I instantly pulled that doorman off the door. I said, that's you. You've seen that. You've caused that. And for me, I would be really upset if our doorman were to make you feel like that by a stupid fucking comment or something that was said under their breath. Listen, what you think in your head, but keep it there. And I'm saying this for a doorman.
So the background detail behind it. When you go, if you're planning on transition, you go to GP, you ask for a referral to a gender clinic. At the moment, if somebody were to do that tomorrow, they'd be looking at somewhere around 5 to 6 years before they get that first referral appointment.
Wow.
And the numbers are roughly 850 people a month asking for a referral, trans men and women, and 41 new appointments across all the gender clinics are being awarded for first appointments. That's it. So you add 800 to the list, and take 40 off it every month. It's not hard to see
it's just
where
longer.
that waiting list is getting longer and longer and longer.
Okay.
And there is no will from our government for the NHS to fund treatment for trans people.
I've been on the list for almost 3 years, and I've probably got about another 5 or 6 years before I get seen.
Carrying on the point I'm trying to make about ID and things, you can change your name by deed poll. You could write your own deed poll. You don't have to go to it. You don't have to get a solicitor to do it. No one else. You can do it. You can get witnesses to sign it as long as the letter is worded correctly.
Yeah.
You could change your name to Matilda tomorrow if you want to, and you could get your driving licence updated to say Matilda as your name, but your photograph would still be the photo that you've supplied. And your gender marker would still be the gender marker.
Did I not tell you I identify as His Royal Highness?
I think there are things that you're not allowed to change your name to by deed poll.
I didn't know that. I might try that later.
I'm surmising, but I reckon if you tried to change your name to His Royal Highness, I reckon you probably wouldn't get that awarded.
Fucking
However,
hell. There you go. That's
side
my
issue.
idea.
So you've started it. You've gone to your GP. You've asked for referral. That whole period you're on a waiting list, you haven't had your first appointment. You haven't even been assessed as a first appointment to say, yeah, you can progress with treatment.
And it's going to take years.
And you cannot do anything about the gender marker on your driving licence and passport.
Does that cause you a problem, the fact that the gender marker still says male?
Only through the minute somebody asks me for ID and I have to pull my driving licence out.
Do you mind me asking, why would you be asked for ID? Because, no offence, but you don't look 18.
Because so many places now scan ID and they want a passport or a driving licence before you can enter a venue, and you have to. And here's the point: if they're doing that, it doesn't matter, because what they're looking for is an ID that they can scan against the photograph that they're taking with the camera. So on their system, if you've kicked off or causing a problem, they've got a photograph of you to match their CCTV
The scanners,
against an ID.
Yeah. And the reality is, sometimes ID, certainly with doorman, more often than not, the ID, if it's not a scanner, it's just to establish age.
I've got to be honest, Nat is just turned 50. I'm nearly 50.
Yeah.
Unless it's somewhere that's doing scanning ID, we don't get asked for ID.
No.
Most places we walk straight in. And we don't get asked for it. It's blatantly obvious you're not under 25.
Never ever
so
ask a woman her age, correct?
Yeah, you shouldn't do.
No? So what are you weighing in at these days? I'm only kidding. No, I've just died. I heard that the other day.
I've hit 50 and now I'm aging backwards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're getting better with age, yeah?
You've still got a year to catch up with me, and I'm going the other way.
Look, we're gonna start to wind this up. I think I've asked enough questions. Is there anything you want to ask me about security? Is there anything you want to tell me? Because we're going to wind this up, and I've got a feeling, and I'm just looking now, 9,400 people, they're going to probably want to know some more things. So,
do you know what?
Down the line,
I've got your phone number and I've got your messenger. If there's anything comes up,
yeah.
The one thing that's really difficult is to get any information off SIA.
I'm an SIA approved contractor, and they don't fucking talk to me. So they're never talking to you.
Before we came here,
Yeah.
I did some research about SIA to try and see what, if anything, there was that they told people or was there. And
They don't.
apart from,
They don't. And I'm a trainer. I know the SIA don't.
Apart from
they don't
it's on a
sanction our
government
training.
website, and it tells you who they are, what they're the monitoring body for.
I've never looked, but was there any sort of transgender policies at all on there?
You can't get any policy or anything unless you've got a login,
right,
to be able to go on the SIA.
Well, do you know what
website?
I have, because we're an SIA approved company, and we.
It's almost like the SIA exists to do something, but they don't want to tell anyone what they're actually telling people.
Well, when you figure that out, you let us know, because we're all working in the industry and we ain't got a fucking clue either.
Exactly.
And that's the truth. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Look, guys, everybody, I just want to say thank you to Sophie and Natalie. Natasha. Fuck. So bad. Honestly, I really appreciate your time, and I got a feeling that this is probably not the end of it. I think we're probably going to go, let's do this again in time. I think you guys have represented yourselves really well. I think you've given us some really good feedback on how we are to deal with stuff. I've learned some stuff tonight, and I've been in this game for 30 years. Granted, I haven't dealt with too many other than Nadia wanting to punch my head in. You know what? Thank you very much. And all I can say is I hope you girls have enjoyed it. And maybe, we'll have a coffee and a tea, and maybe we'll have a drink somewhere out there at one of my venues. And hopefully all my doormen will look after you.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that most of the doormen now will sort of have an idea on how they should approach transgender people and certainly deal with it. And, the fact that we can say you can use the female toilets, and if somebody has a grievance with that, then it's a them problem. We good with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, girls.
Thanks
I think
for
you've
having
been
us.
great.
Thank you.
And guys, let me know what you think as always. Hopefully you've got some stuff out of this that's useful. I hope I've tried to ask questions that are informative, and please let me know what you think. It's a little bit longer. We've gone on for an hour and 8 minutes, and we could have probably gone on for another 2 hours. Let me know what you think. Thank you, guys.